Next up, we have Trey Gerfers. He's the board president of Presidio County, UWCD, and he's going to be talking about mandates, monitoring, and finding the funding for it all. There is your little.
There it is. Awesome. Hey, y'all. As she mentioned, I'm from Presidio County. I'm actually originally from San Antonio, but I've been living out in Marfa for about 8 years. And when I had originally, let's see if I can get this, yeah, there it is. When I had originally submitted this idea to TAGGed, I was envisioning kind of a group discussion because there's been a lot of different groups that have been helping us getting the funding that we need to cover these mandates, but they felt like a one-man show was going to be the way to go. So hopefully this will be of interest to y'all. I'm going to be kind of sharing with you a little bit of the journey that we've been on in Presidio County, and hopefully can give some of y'all ideas if you're like us and don't have very much funding, or if you know other districts that kind of need help with this. Hopefully that I can give y'all some creative ideas for getting some funding. A little bit about me real quick, about how I kind of got into this. I used to be the head of a environmental group out in the Big Bend called the Big Bend Conservation Alliance. And we got our start fighting a little bitty pipeline y'all might have heard of called the Trans-Pecos Pipeline, which was ostensibly to export natural gas to Mexico. And they've never exported any gas with that pipeline yet, but they ended up building it, and it was such a bitter experience, and it was a really divisive experience, but it galvanized public opinion, and it got people paying attention to the fact that we're not so remote as we think we are, and we're going to have to face challenges that are coming at us, and the sooner we face them, the better. So when the pipeline was built, and there was a lot of just people that were so angry and so bitter, I was looking around trying to figure out, okay, how can we direct this energy in a positive way so that we can get ready? There was a lot of talk earlier today about resilience and readiness, and I felt like the pipeline should have taught us that we need to be ready for these challenges instead of constantly trying to play catch up. How do we work the process? How, protests and I don't know, all these tools that environmental groups or a lot of protest groups will use. They don't tend to be very successful, and they tend to be maybe a little bit divisive. And so I wanted to find a way to get ready ahead of time for the next challenge. And I think everyone agrees that water's one of the most important things that we need to be ready with. So that's how I got into this water world. And so I formed a water group in Brewster County. We started attending groundwater district meetings, and that's how I got sort of baptized into how do these districts work. And so that's when I started looking at the groundwater district in my county, which was a very nebulous organization because we never really knew when they were meeting. Just to kind of give you some background, our groundwater district covers almost 4,000 square miles, and it's one of the poorest counties in Texas, very, very low income levels. It functions as a fee-based district, but the enabling legislation provides for taxing authority. It just was never authorized by the voters. And so we're also in a bit of a pickle with property taxes right now. I mean, I'm sure everyone says the same thing, but Marfa's in a really difficult position because you have a really, really poor town that falls under the Robin Hood Act with our school district, where we send over $500,000 back to Austin because we're classified as a rich district. We have a lot of New Yorkers, no offense to my friends in New York, Californians, Europeans that buy their 7th and 8th homes in Marfa. And so it's really driven up the values, and it makes it very difficult for us to keep our tax dollars in the county or in the city of Marfa. And then surrounding Marfa and the rest of the county really is sort of a, the landowners tend to be very anti-tax. And then Presidio, which is our biggest town, has had a contracting economy for many, many years. And so the idea of getting a tax for our district is particularly challenging. So when I started looking at trying to get involved with the groundwater district, I found that the directors were not showing up for meetings. It was very difficult for them to achieve a quorum. And they really weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing. They weren't going to GMA meetings. We're in GMA 4. They weren't really paying toward the, the consultant fees that you need to be paying, the dues to the Council of Governments. And then finally, the straw that broke the camel's back was one of our directors was indicted by the FBI for bribery in 2018. And so I just said, look, this is not going to work. So I went to the judge, got myself appointed. They promptly made me chairman, lucky me. And so we started looking at a new direction. The first step was I went to the county commissioners. If you're having trouble, getting funding, probably one of the first things you need to be doing is talking up your county commissioners and really trying to help them understand not just that water's important or that water is life or any of those catchphrases, but frame it in the challenges. What we did was we framed it in the challenges that we're facing. So the first challenge that I really tried to bring home to them was population growth. Even though Presidio County is losing population, which is kind of hard to believe. Somebody touched on that earlier, though, that the rural counties are losing population. We're going to be influenced by the population growth in the cities in our region through water ranching. And so, no offense to my friends from El Paso. El Paso owns quite a number of wells in the northwest county of our district. And those wells will be tapped eventually to supply municipal needs. And so if we don't have a way to understand what those impacts are going to be now, before they come, we're going to be in a lot of trouble when that day does come. And so I was trying to bring that home to the commissioners. And then also at that time, back in 2018, Apache Corporation and others were still very active just north of us in Jeff Davis County and the Delaware Basin, kind of the southernmost of the Permian Basin. And we were just seeing studies, like this Duke University study talking about a large increase in the amount of water needed. And they're constantly refining that technology, and that requires more and more water. And so just because we're remote, just because we're far away, doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be immune to these pressures. So I'm talking to the commissioners, and of course, they're saying, well, we don't have the money. We don't have the money. And we were only getting $10,000 when I started. That was our annual budget. And so if you're having trouble convincing your county commissioners, you can go to your legislators and tell them that your commissioners are not giving you the money that you need. And so we had a really great senator, I miss him very much, Senator Rodriguez, who I wrote to and outlined the same challenges I was talking to our commissioners about. And he wrote a really, really strong letter urging the commissioners to support our full budget request, which was a whopping $37,000, and we got it. So by then we had enough money to hire a part-time general manager. We were able to kind of pay all the people that were mad at us that we hadn't been paying. But we really didn't have enough money to start a monitoring program. And so if you're in this same situation where your county just doesn't have the funds, you might try looking around for local partners, for local foundations, for local groups that are there, whose mission might align with your own. So we started talking to the good folks at Dixon Water Foundation. They operate an enormous ranch north of Marfa called the MIMS Unit. And they were very helpful in coordinating or facilitating some money for us to buy our first round of monitoring equipment. And so we started kind of getting that going, and then we started coming to these groundwater summits. And lo and behold, the first one we came to, Senator Perry, many of you may have been here that year. He just laid it out flat. Districts, if you cannot prove that your decisions are data-driven, quote, I can't not help you. And so I looked at my general manager at the time, and I was like, we got to do something. I mean, we've really got to get this data in an actionable form. We're starting the monitoring, but what are we going to do with this data? And plus we had other stuff, but it was in Excel spreadsheets and super useful PDFs and dusty files. And so we really needed to figure something out. So fortunately, at the summit, we ran into HAF, and this is a bit of a plug for HAF, but really, you want to find some kind of a data solution so that you can, especially if you're just starting out with your monitoring program, because the more data you're collecting, if you have to populate a database later, it's a little more difficult. So we're sort of just now starting out fresh with our data management software. I convinced the board to dig into some savings that we had. We went on ahead and just shelled out the money to get the data management software. And so then once we had the data management software going, that opened up the opportunity for federal grants. And so USGS has a really good program with their National Groundwater Monitoring Network. And so if you're a district that maybe they don't have any wells that they're monitoring yet, way out in the Big Bend on the frontier, they didn't have any wells. And so when we submitted our application, there was just this giant square all around that part of Texas with 0 wells. So we were able to convince them to give us, I guess it was about $70,000 to become a data provider. And then that will open up for us and for really any district that becomes a data provider, a lot of funding for water quality testing, which we really don't have much of at all in Presidio County, and also the ability to drill our own wells. So I don't know, some of y'all might know how dry it is out there in the Chihuahuan Desert. And because we really don't have the luxury of having equipment ruined if a rancher needs to, pull his pump and repair something on the well, we're always looking for wells that are not in use. And so it's been very difficult to find people with wells that are not in use. And so if we can get this funding from USGS to drill our own wells, then we can start taking advantage of other partnerships in the region. Like if you have a state park in your district, if you have a national park in your district, trying to build relationships with them so that you can monitor wells on their land. And I'm fairly hopeful that through our partnership with Texas Parks and Wildlife, we'll be able to drill at least one well in the Chinati State Natural Area, and also some wells maybe up in the north of our county, which is sort of closer to the Davis Mountains where a lot of our recharge happens. So something else that's great about this job, just as an aside, we get to access so much cool land. So I almost don't mind that I'm not paid. So now, if you're looking at your desired future conditions, as we were in this last 5-year cycle, we were finding that the data just really was not very robust. We really didn't have very much. Some of our DFCs were calling for a drawdown that was deeper than the wells that we have. It just wasn't making a lot of sense. And so we started talking about, what can we do as a GMA to get more data. And a lot of them are in the same boat that we are. I mean, Brewster next door, they don't tax. Culberson next door, they do tax, but they don't have a ton of money. And so we started thinking about, okay, who could we partner with to maybe get money to get some sort of a data system, maybe similar to what we have already in Presidio, so that then they can start collecting data that we could more easily share across a common platform. So that's what we did recently. We're still waiting to hear back from this, but we teamed up with 2 districts, Culberson and Brewster, in our GMA, and the Big Bend Conservation Alliance, which I've stepped away from now for a couple of years now. But they wrote the grant and submitted it on our behalf to get a standardized regional data platform. And so this way we'll be able to, share data more readily on the aquifers that we share, and also it'll just make things a lot more streamlined if we want to apply for grants in the future, because it'll all be on one platform. The other thing that in trying to sweeten the deal with the groundwater districts that are going in on this with us, since we already have the software, they were the ones that were going to have to cough up the 50%, because this Water Smart grant is only a 50% match. So I was telling them, look, we will write the grant to get y'all to become data providers to the USGS, and then you'll have all of this opportunity for the funding for the water quality testing and for the drilling your own wells. And wow, everybody got real excited about the drilling your own wells. So we still haven't heard back about that yet. I'm hopeful that even if we don't end up getting this grant, which I've heard is very difficult to get, Maybe the districts will just go on ahead and do what we did, which was just dig into their savings and just buy the stuff, because that, again, will unlock all those other funding opportunities that I've talked about. And so hopefully, with any luck, if we can get our data management system going and we can start getting our monitoring systems in place, I'm really hopeful that in the next 2 to 5 years, when it's time to do our DFCs again, we'll have a robust system in place, and we'll be able to really make decisions on our DFCs that are based on science that's current, instead of a lot of this ancient stuff, which our friends at the Water Development Board have done a great job volunteering their time with us, putting that data together. But I'm really, really hopeful that with this new funding and with these new data management systems, we'll have something that's a lot more robust. Because as we all heard earlier yesterday, we got to be able to point to something and say this is how we came up with this. So I think that's all. So does anybody have any questions for me? Any comments? Any grants that you know of that I might need to apply for? All right. Thank y'all.